Thank you, Damon. Thank you very much for including your work here. So we've got some pretty interesting stuff going on here. I think that you got some good illustrations. I want to comment on each of these illustrations, and I also want to leave you with your question of the week. Okay, so this I think is a really super compelling illustration. I think it's got a lot of visual attributes that point in that direction. Um, there's one thing that kind of concerns me about this illustration, and that's the shape of the background. So, in a lot of times when we analyze work, we want to also include not only the a comment on the effectiveness of the elements and principles of design and how they're used in the illustration, but also if there's any connotative meanings that might kind of maybe dilute the overall meaning of the piece. So my only concern of I think the execution is gorgeous. I mean, these little individual elements are beautiful. But my concern about this is the fact that the background shape is shaped like a badge, like a policeman's badge. And to me, that indicates some sort of a relationship between the subject matter, the tiger, and the shape of the background, which is a police badge. Presumably, there is no connection here. So that kind of adds a point of confusion as to why the background shape is shaped in the way it is, indeed. And I think that points to a negative connotative connection, kind of indicating that the background is not applicable, or the shape of the background has nothing to do with the content of the illustration. Does that make sense? Um, so that's my only problem with this. Now, you mentioned in this one that, so here, I'm going to base my questions of the week on this illustration, and then I'll comment on the other two. So this illustration, the question is this, is that you mentioned the artist is from India, and you're saying that he wanted to use culture of India, which he nailed on this line. How do you? I'd like you to describe how the culture of India is captured in this piece, and that's your question for the week. The other question is that you know what? Let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. I want you to describe how this captures the culture of India. Okay, let's go on and move to the next film. This is a pretty standard technique. As a matter of fact, I believe this is straight from a tutorial. And this is something that, if this was an original idea, I would say this is fantastic. But these kind of typographic portrait compositions are really super common. If you go online, you'll see just literally thousands of them. So I'm not so sure if I can comment on the originality of this type of illustration. I mean, I would sure love to know the first person who came up with the idea of a typographic portrait. But again, it's just this. If you just go ahead and Google typographic portrait, you'll see a ton of these. There's two different ways to do it in Illustrator or Photoshop. This is done in Photoshop. Okay, and then this one, I think that I agree. I'm not so sure that it's just horrible design. It's just really super simplistic, but the left and right sides are really inconsistent. And one of the reasons I say that is because the lining up the face is one thing. That's fantastic, but the eyes are lined up, right? But really, that's the only thing that's lined up, the eyes and the bottom of the chin. But the hair is not. And I think that creates some uncomfortable visual tension. I really do. Otherwise, if the hair lined up, this thing would be a lot easier to look at, a lot easier to understand. Right now, that's a big mistake in this illustration. The other thing I think is a mistake is the fact that Joker's got a big smile, but so how do we transition a smile into like a seemingly kind of I mean, Batman always kind of, when in costume, he always had kind of a scowl on his face like this. You know what I'm saying? He always had that kind of scowl. It was like a very straight mouth, not curved up, not curved down. So instead of trying to transition this smile into that, this designer said, "Oh, I'm just going to leave the mouth out altogether." And that points to inconsistency from the left and right hand side. The right side of the illustration is much more detailed than the left by default, simply because the Joker had eyebrows and that smiley face, right? So I think that we could make some sort of embellishments here to indicate a mouth on the Batman side, and also even out the top of the illustration. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. I think that would definitely take this into the right direction, or at least a step in the correct direction. But anyways, yes, your question is describe how we get the culture of India based on the aesthetic value of this piece. All right, so Good job, Damon. Thank you very much, and looking forward to your response. Thank you.